Stories told by nurses. Working in a nursing home means dealing with life and death every day. But sometimes things happen that defy logic. These stories come from nurses and caregivers, people who have seen the unexplainable with their own eyes. There are countless stories like these. Some believe them, others dismiss them as fatigue or imagination. But those who have worked in these places know, sometimes in a nursing home, you're never really alone. 1. The roommate who wasn't there. Nurse Sarah was on a night shift when she heard a quiet conversation coming from one of the rooms. She knew that Mrs. Gray, an elderly woman suffering from dementia, was the only patient there and hadn't had visitors in a long time. When Sarah entered the room, Mrs. Gray was sitting on her bed, staring at an empty corner. "Do you need anything?" Sarah asked. "Oh, no, dear," the old woman smiled. "I'm just talking to Mr. Thomas. He's been living here for a long time." Sarah knew there was no Mr. Thomas in the facility. She assumed it was just a symptom of dementia. 2. The mirror that looks back. Nurse Emily recalled that there was an old vintage mirror in one of the hallways. It always made the staff feel uneasy. One night, Emily was walking past it when she caught her reflection out of the corner of her eye. But something felt off. She stopped and looked directly at the mirror. Her reflection did the same, but a fraction of a second too late. Emily froze. She stepped to the side, and her reflection followed. But again, just a little too slow. It was as if it was trying to catch up. From that night on, she avoided that hallway after dark. Then, one day, the mirror was gone. Rumor had it that patients complained about someone on the other side. 3. Who's knocking at the window? John, a nurse, worked at a nursing home in a rural area. Outside the building, there was nothing but darkness for miles. One night, he heard knocking at the window. When he went to check, he saw only blackness beyond the glass. He stepped outside, but there was no one there, just footprints, barefoot and wet, leading away into the night. The next day, a 90-year-old veteran asked him, "You heard it too, didn't you? They come every night." When John asked who they were, the old man just chuckled and turned away. The woman in white. At the nursing home where Lisa worked, there were whispers about a woman in white. Staff and patients alike claimed to have seen her walking the halls, appearing in rooms, sometimes standing silently on the staircase. One night, Lisa was on duty when she saw someone stepping out of a room where a patient had recently passed away. It was a woman in a long white coat. "Excuse me, do you need help?" Lisa called out. The woman didn't answer. She simply turned the corner and disappeared. When Lisa reached the hallway, it was empty. Later, her colleagues told her about a nurse who had worked there many years ago and died tragically in a fire. Ever since then, people had seen her in a white coat, as if she was still looking after the patients. 5. The whispering shadow nurse Olivia had always been skeptical of ghost stories, until something happened to her during a late-night shift. One of the elderly residents, Mrs. Henderson, often complained about someone whispering to her at night. She claimed a shadow stood by her bed, mumbling things she couldn't understand. The staff assumed it was just part of her dementia, but Olivia always felt uneasy in that room. One night, Olivia was making her rounds when she heard a faint whispering coming from Mrs. Henderson's room. She stopped outside the door, listening. It wasn't the sound of the old woman muttering in her sleep. It was something else, something lower, like a voice coming from the walls. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. Mrs. Henderson was fast asleep, but the whispering continued. Then Olivia saw it, a dark figure standing in the corner of the room. It didn't move, didn't breathe, but she could feel its presence.